All right, looks like we're live. Make sure that that pops up there like it's supposed to. Okay. All right. So if you have not, if you've not seen me before, I'm World Builder Zak. I write, I illustrate, and I also voice epic poems. So sci-fi stories that I'm trying to create my own sci-fi universe. Some of my stories don't rhyme like epic poems, but the most recent ones have, and that's kind of becoming the thing that I'm really enjoying doing. So if you have any questions about the world, about the epic poems, about the characters, or even about me, feel free to ask in the chat. And I'd love to answer those questions for you. Until then, I'm going to start reading the epic poem. I do this live, and then I edit it, for the actual video later, add in the illustrations, that sort of thing. So let's get to the page that I'll be reading off of, and make sure, yep, it's in there correctly. Great. So. All right. Also, I've had this cold and a bunch of smog going on in Minnesota from the wildfires in Canada, so my voice might not quite be, might not quite be what it's supposed to be. Forgive me for that if that happens. So, but I'm going to do my best. All right. We will start with the previously on Necromancers. Previously on Necromancers. Previously on Necromancers. Nexus, the child prodigy of necromancers, retaliated. Okay. Nexus, the child prodigy of necromancers, retaliated against the Knights of Night for hurting his parents, resurrecting their undead pets, and using them to kill the knights. His devout parents took Nexus to the palace of the Church of the Endless Chasm to confess their son's sins. His devout parents took Nexus to the palace for the Church of the Endless Chasm to confess their son's sins. Witnessing what he is capable of, the priest minister of the Church of the Endless Chasm and leader of planet Necromantia took Nexus in with the blessing of his parents. Nexus was not happy about this, but he went along reluctantly. Since then, he has been tortured and trained by the Knights of Night under Anastasis's direct supervision, and must challenge her each year for a chance to see his parents again. To this day, he has not been reunited with his family. Now 14 years old, who or what will this child become? The origin story of Nexus continues in this epic poem, written, illustrated, and voiced by World Builder Zak. Now I'm kind of thinking of cutting a lot of that out and maybe starting with, probably just starting with kind of the witnessing of what he's capable of, priest minister, but instead I think maybe we'll just say Nexus being, let's see here. Nexus, the prodigy of necromancers, was taken from his parents by Anastasis, the leader of Necromantia. Yeah, and we could probably just continue from there. So, all right, that should work out. Let me check in again with the stream. Where do I click here? There we go. And yep, if you have any questions, again, just feel free to ask in there. I did notice something really weird. So because I talk a lot about these churches and stuff, they're really kind of these dark churches. They aren't, of course, anything like religious or anything like that. But I think YouTube has picked up on those as keywords and then has started sending me like religious type stuff after I've watched it. So I'm a little worried that they're sending this, which might be kind of not the best content for people that are like super duper religious. It's just supposed to be sci-fi, fun world building, that sort of a thing. But sending it to them instead of sending it to, people that are into like sci-fi and fantasy and that sort of thing. So this is going to be like darker sci-fi, kind of darker, fantasy, that sort of thing. So I don't think that's quite the right audience. Hopefully YouTube figures that out. But for now, I'm still recording this because this is the story I want to tell. But I don't think it's doing my channel any justice. Luckily, that's not really why I'm doing it. So, but I will go ahead and continue here with the voiceover. All right, so now we're starting the actual epic poem, this episode at least. So this is where it's going to start rhyming, and it does song lyrics or rap, not super technical in that way. But I do make sure that I don't do any filler rhymes. So no lines that don't really belong just to make something else fit in. That's really my only main rule is the story's got to come first. The story has to be pushed along. There has to be twists and turns, and it's got to be a lot of fun to listen to or read. So, all right, I'll get started here with episode 3 of Necromancers. Necromantia may be known as the wasteland of the undead, but there was a time when it was a planet of science instead. Necropolis, the capital of Necromantia, spread its technology far and wide. Necropolis, the capital of Necromantia, spread its technology far and wide. Cultivating the fruit of knowledge was where they grew their greatest pride. Cultivating their fruit of knowledge was where they grew their greatest pride. Prosperity spread out from the capital like ripples in a lake. Overcoming the lack of resources their barren planet could make. People were happy enough in their still growing golden age. That is, until the day of rising 1,000 years ago, everything would change. That is until the day of rising 1,000 years ago. Everything would change. In a small village on the eastern edge of society's end, a spiritual leader stumbled upon the canonic ability to raise the dead. So this is going to be an explanation, kind of how they got where they are. This was a culture of science. They were, traveling the stars, doing everything until this discovery happened, and it kind of sent them to the Stone Ages in a way. Not quite the Stone Ages, but really kind of to a backwards, very backwards from where they were. A spiritual leader stumbled upon the canonic ability to raise the dead. She believed she tapped into the power of the Almighty God. To the scientists of Necropolis, it was a discovery. To the scientists of Necropolis, it was a discovery most intriguingly odd. Necropolis descended on the village like a swarm. They studied the village priestess. She was more than happy to perform. And Necropolis, so the analogy I'm kind of doing here, a necropolis is kind of like a dead city or a tomb, underground, that sort of thing. And this is, of course, a really technological society kind of, and that was named Necropolis. But later on, as the story progresses, it, of course, kind of collapses in on itself and becomes, they kind of go into hiding. So they hold themselves back and they cut themselves off from, what you'll find are the necromancers. And in doing so, they've kind of created a tomb for themselves. So that's where that analogy comes in. It was true. She could really do it. And she could... It was true. She could really do it. And she could even show them how. She simply felt her energy cut through the ground like a spiritual plow. spiritual plow. She simply felt her energy cut through the ground like a spiritual plow. As a priestess, she was more in tune with the energy than the others around her. As a priestess, she was more in tune with the energy than the others around her. Her people were able to learn it too, despite it taking them longer. The scientists believed it genetic. The villagers believed it divine. Kinetic abilities play out like this approximately half the time. To prove it was science and not something godly, a Necropolis lab went live online and raised a dead body. A Necropolis lab went live online and raised a dead body. In doing so, they described exactly how they did it. But the public instead used their explanation as a blueprint. Science is as science does. They should have left it vague. At first, necromancy spread like a rash, then it escalated to a plague. Try that again. At first, necromancy spread like a rash, then escalated to a plague. Necropolis retreated inside the walls and sealed itself like a tomb. Only their advanced technology would hold back the tide of doom. Should that be tide or tides? I think it's tide, because it's just doom. Okay. Unless there was, yeah. I guess you could do it either way with there being multiple necromancers. But I think tide of doom is best. Slowly, over hundreds of years, necromancy became a talent for all. All except Necropolis. Necromancy was forbidden inside the wall. All except Necropolis. Necromancy was forbidden inside the wall. Anyone caught using it was immediately expelled. Anyone caught using it was immediately expelled. Forced to live outside the capital as an exiled. Forced to live outside the capital as an exiled. Necromancy had a way of twisting people, magnifying their darker urges. Control over the dead is the place where forbidden and temptation, where the forbidden and temptation merges. Should be merge, but it rhymes better. Control over the dead is the place where the forbidden and temptation merges. This is going to take me a couple tries, I think. Control over the dead is the place where the forbidden and temptation merges. Temptation. Control over the dead is the place where the forbidden and temptation merges. Trust eroded between neighbors and friends. Murdering for undead slaves became one of the common trends. Murdering for undead slaves became one of the common trends. Society eroded. Hate and fear flooded every corner. Parents would hide their daughters out of fear someone would kill to control her. People eventually found a chasm deeper than they could measure. People eventually found a chasm deeper than they could measure. I guess that doesn't make sense. If they're super scientific, they would have found this chasm a long time ago. All right. I will say turned, instead of found, we'll say eventually turned to. All right, leaves it a little vaguer then. Okay. People eventually turned to a chasm deeper than they could measure. People eventually turned to a chasm deeper than they could measure. Much better. Because necromancy only reaches so far, the chasm became their greatest treasure. All right, let's check back in here. See if there's anything. All right. Perfect. All right, back to this. It's natural to seek comfort from things that cause distress. Many offered to bring order to chaos and enforce law to the lawless. Okay. Many offered to bring order to chaos and enforce law to the lawless. Religion sprouted from spirituality. Religion sprouted from spirituality, claiming. Religion sprouted from spirituality, claiming to know the unknowable. Prophets and propaganda popped up. Prophets and propaganda popped up at a rate that was uncontrollable. Churches and temples warred with each other. Churches and temples warred with each other, swallowing each other whole. The wars claimed the purpose of freedom. The wars claimed the purpose of freedom and peace, but they really fought for control. One church's strategy was extremely simple: control the chasm to control the people. They successfully positioned themselves to control access to the canyon. This church then changed their name to the Church of the Endless Chasm. Control of the most valuable resource on the planet. Control of the most valuable resource the planet has to offer gave the church the leverage to obtain the control they were after. Gave the church the leverage to obtain the control. Gave the church the leverage to Where am I? Gave the church the leverage to obtain the control they were after. Gave the church the leverage to obtain the control they were after. Gave the church the leverage to obtain the control that they were after. I don't know if that was necessary. I got to do it again. I think my camera restarted. So, gave the church the leverage to obtain the control that they were after. The chasm sucked in the wealthy. The chasm sucked in the wealthy and held peaceful rest. Peaceful rest. The chasm sucked in the wealthy and held the chasm sucked in the wealthy and held peaceful. That's not that hard of a word. Peaceful rest. The chasm sucked in the wealthy and held peaceful rest hostage. They offered positions to the most talented as a way to escape the garbage. Controlling 90% of the people and even more of the land, the church declared the chasm the capital and the planet under their command. The church declared the chasm the capital and the planet. The church declared the chasm the capital and the planet under their command. Last time we came to this wretched planet, we tried to converse with the people who ran it. Last time we came to this wretched planet, we tried to converse with the people who ran it. The priest minister rejected us and our evil science. The priest minister rejected us and our evil science. They refused to even meet with the Advanced Planet Alliance. So, of course, in my universe, there's this Advanced Planet Alliance, kind of think Star Trek-ish, I guess. Except, it's like a lot of different planets, each with completely different species. They each have different powers. Necromantia is one of those planets, and the Necromancer power is one of those powers. So there's going to just be tons of characters and stuff. My brain just goes blue like crazy. So anyway, that's what's going on here. It's been explained in previous stories, but just in case you're coming for the first time, you get to see that now, or get to find out about that. All right. We now turn to Necropolis instead, though they refuse to use powers that raise the undead. These scientists asked me to intimidate their rival. These scientists asked me to intimidate their rival. By parking my ship above their city, I increase their chance for survival. But now the undead army surrounds us like a ring. There's nothing we can do except wait for them to start attacking. This siege will surely end in the end of Necropolis. So this is what I'm talking about, this scientific city kind of turning into a tomb in a sense where these people are just waiting to die over time. So I wish I could do more, but merely hovering here is almost treasonous. The Valaris remain neutral in private planet conflicts. We must sit by and witness the horrors that doing nothing inflicts. This dry rock is broken. This dry rock is broken. I long to repair it. I fear when the church is done, there will be nothing left of it. All right. I'm going to do those both again. This dry rock is broken. I long to repair it. I fear when the conflict is done. No, I fear when the church is done, there will be nothing left of it. Nexus, the prodigy, is now a product of torture. So Nexus was taken in by Anastasis and the church and all that. He's lived there now for like 7 years without his parents. He wants to see them again. He's basically been forced to train all this time. They say he's like the future prince for them because he's so powerful. But he's not, he's not loving and he doesn't want to be there. He just wants to see his parents. He's still just a kid with that basic need and that basic want to see his parents, who willfully gave him over because they were so devout to this kind of crazy backwards church. But anyway, that's where we are now. Nexus is this prodigy, and this is his origin story. So it's going to kind of continue into the Milky Way Academy from there. Nexus, the prodigy, is now a product of torture. As a teen, he walks the line between child and something more mature. He should be broken, and in some ways he is. His anger is a pet to him. He owns it. It is his. Bishop Virgo is now the closest thing he has to a parent. Virgo still follows and fears Anastasis, but Nexus can sense his intent. All right. Virgo still follows and fears Anastasis, but Nexus can sense his intent. Virgo drops his eyes to the floor. It's time again, Excellency. It is time again, Excellency. It is time again, Excellency. He's kind of down about this. Virgo drops his eyes to the floor. It is time again, Excellency. Time to show the priest minister how far you've come in necromancy. This time I can do it. I will show her what I can do. This time I can do it. I will show her what I can do. She'll reunite me with my parents if She'll reunite me with my parents if what she says is true. She will reunite me with my parents if what she says is true. And that should be that. Oops. And I'm going to do Shield because he's a kid. So it's not going to be that. It's not going to be that formal. All right. This is kind of when I do my revisions. I write these in like a week and then I read them and then I edit them. So I don't have much time to do like an editing process. I don't have an editor, anything like that. Nexus marches with determination to the pavilion where the Knights of Night train. Today is muddy and wet. The battle will take place in the rain. The battle will take place in the rain. Today is muddy and wet. The battle will take place in the rain. Last time, Nexus brought all the power he could bolster. Last time, Nexus brought all the power he could bolster. For the first time he maintained his undead, she was not able to pull them to her. For the first time he maintained his undead, she was not able to pull them to her. All right, let's just pop in, look at the chat. Okay. All right. Again, if you have any questions, feel free. This is a very new thing. This is only the third episode I've recorded live, so I'm not expecting many people to pop in, but if you are here, feel free to say hi or ask any questions if you have it. All right. They fought long and hard, but she was still too strong. He realized by the end of that she had been stringing him along. He realized by the end of that she had been stringing him along. It wasn't her power that made her stronger. It wasn't her power that made her stronger. It was experience and technique that tipped the advantage over to her. It was experience and technique that tipped the advantage over to her. Searching for new ways to win this battle of wills, this year Nexus focused far more on his skills. This time he's ready. He will pass her test. He stayed motivated all year to give his very best. He steps into the rain. His boots start to soak. No attention to the storm. He pulls back the hood of his cloak. No attention to the storm. He pulls back the hood of his cloak. Anastasis stands below a tent. Anastasis stands below a tent at the other end. An advantage in comfort she was not willing to extend. Although, I think she ends up sitting. Oh, okay. No, not yet. Good. She announces to the crowd, She announces to the crowd, I have buried 10 monsters in the soil beneath our feet. The first to draw blood is the victor, the other shamed in defeat. What is her long-term plan? What is her long-term plan? She vowed to raise this boy to a man. Every time she wins, she fails in that goal. But if he wins, she risks losing her control. That's pausing. I don't like that. She risks losing. But if he wins, she risks losing her control. Short-sighted, though she must have thought this through. Short-sighted, though she must have thought this through. I still don't think I've... This is actually a cute... My wife and son got me this. He was a little too young to actually read at the time, but it said, Dear Dad, thanks for being my dad. If I had a different dad, I would punch him in the face and go find you, love Ronan. So, I'm not sponsored, but just a really cool coffee mug. I'm drinking water out of it, though. All right. Here we go. I still don't think I predicted exactly what she's trying to do. The battle will commence at the first lightning strike. She walks to her chair and calmly sets down her mic. Anastasis sits legs crossed. Cross-legged, probably. No, legs crossed probably works. Anastasis sits legs crossed, staring at her foe. Anastasis sits legs crossed, staring at her foe. Are her carefree gestures genuine, or are they just for show? Nexus stands swimming in weighted waterlogged wool. Ah, I did that on the first try? That's, wow. I thought that one was going to trip me up. Fingers twitch at his hip, scanning the ground, waiting to pull. 6 giant snakes he senses. 6 giant snakes he senses. How about he senses 6 giant snakes? That's better. He senses 6 giant snakes and 4 other foul beasts. All right, so cut. Paste. There we go. Wait, one more? Is this a test? Wait, one more? Is this a test? Or one of her deceits? Okay. Wait, one more? Is this a test? Or one of her deceits? It's faint. He can't quite make out what it is. But if it's part of Anastasis's plan, then he will make it his. He can't reach it yet, but he'll figure it out. It must be what this whole stupid battle's all about. Lightning strikes the ground. In a flash, Nexus yanks 2 snakes from the ground. So fast that the dirt explodes with a booming sound. Anastasis leaps up, running in place across the serpent's backs. Let's try that again. Anastasis leaps up, running in place across the serpent's backs. Her chair and microphone devoured, metallic undead reptile snacks. Nexus swoops them up. Nexus swoops them up and back like a wave chasing a surfer. Anastasis just smiles and yanks the undead tiger underneath her. She charges the boy. Or they charge the boy? That's probably better. They charge the boy. They charge the boy, still keeping their focus on the snakes. Incoming claw. Nexus dives to the side. One scratch is all that it takes. He plunges the serpents down. He plunges the serpents down to where the tiger and Anastasis landed. She pulls out a gorilla who deflects both snakes single-handed. I feel like there's a lot of in that. She pulls out a gorilla who deflects both snakes single-handed. The gorilla slaps the ground, exposing a noticeable crack. Nexus runs. Anastasis pauses. Nexus runs. Anastasis pauses, expecting another attack. She's experienced. From this, she knows the snakes are still burrowing. Nope, I went past that. Okay. There we go. She feels the vibrations from the earth under the ground churning. She feels the vibrations from earth. Oh yeah, it's from earth. She feels vibrations from earth under the ground churning. She's experienced. From this she knows. She's experienced. From this she knows the snakes are still burrowing. She's experienced. From this she knows the snakes are still burrowing. Patience lost. She sends the gorilla to charge. It closes in quickly. It closes in quickly, his form appearing increasingly large. Nexus releases his snakes at the last second to avoid harm. I know most people won't just keep reading like this, but I have very limited time, so I just kind of keep going and power through it. He reaches down and pulls up a gator that snatches the gorilla's arm. Nexus runs again, regaining control of his serpent pets. This plan is so dumb, he thinks. It's as risky as it gets. All right. This plan is so dumb, he thinks. It's as risky as it gets. He roots up the snakes again, this time from below her feet. She straddles both heads and rides them to the sky in an acrobatic feat. I'm really enjoying the fight scenes in this. It was actually a lot of fun to write. It's been a lot of fun to read, so I'm really enjoying that a lot. She rockets a giant bat from the earth and lands on its back. She rockets a giant bat from the earth and lands on its back. She attempts to call the gorilla again and use him in a counterattack. The gator still has its arm. Wow, Nexus must be commanding 3. The gator still has its arm. Wow, Nexus must be commanding 3. He swapped the tiger instead. No, he swapped to the tiger instead. It's easier. Oh no, she did. She swapped to the tiger instead. It's easier than pulling the gorilla free. She swapped to the tiger instead. It's easier than pulling the gorilla free. Nexus directs his snakes underground from above, aiming for the same spot the 2 snakes just blasted out of. What now? Anastasis flies too high out of reach. That's a defense that snakes and mammals just cannot breach. Could it be? Could this be how he'd lose? Was the bat the only right option for Nexus to choose? Was the bat the only right option for Nexus to choose? Nexus looks up and smiles at the ugly bat, even though he stands in direct path of her battle cat. Even though he stands in direct path of her battle cat. In the direct path, maybe? Let's try that. Even though he stands in the direct path of her battle cat. That's better. The tiger closes the distance alarmingly fast. The tiger closes the distance alarmingly fast. Faster than any defense, this 14-year-old prodigy can cast. Okay. Faster than any defense this 14-year-old prodigy can cast. The earth collapses in an instant. The earth collapses in an instant, and Nexus is swallowed whole. What? What? Where of all places was a frackin' hole? Sinkhole. Frackin' sinkhole. What? What? Here of all places? Maybe I'll just do frickin'. I don't know what to do here. I like the science, the whole frackin' thing. I loved Battlestar Galactica. Maybe I'll go with that for that reason. The remake of Battlestar Galactica was one of my favorites. So good. What? Here of all places was a frackin' sinkhole. What about Nexus? Is he dead now too? This can't be the end for him. This just can't be true. No, I didn't say what about Nexus earlier, did I? No, I said, could this be it? Okay. All right. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to do the outro, I guess, here. Tune in next week for the exciting conclusion of Necromancers. Now, click on the next video to go further down the rabbit hole. All right. So I've already actually written almost all of the next one, but I'm not going to read that yet. I'm going to save that for another live stream. That way my voice can recover. But this will be episode 3. I believe then we'll have episode 4 after that, and that should be it, I think. We'll see, but it's pretty close to conclusion. So for just this, origin story, I guess. So we could always go back to it. But we'll definitely be going back to Nexus in the long run. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll check in again if anybody had any questions or anything. But again, as a new live stream, I'm not expecting to see too much of that. But please join me. The next time I go live, hit the notification bell. That's the only time that you're going to actually be able to tell exactly when I'm going live. So far, I haven't been able to set up like a certain day of the week that I do it, partly because I have to write these stories. If it takes me longer to write it than I expected to, life gets in the way, that sort of thing. I do have a kid, wife, full-time job, all that. So anyway, thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next time.